As members will have been informed, County Hall is currently being lit up in orange to support of activism against gender-based violence, which is an annual international campaign. The global theme for this year's 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence is orange. The world end violence against women now. Upcoming events. In the new year, I'm hoping to host an event for volunteers at Bow Manor Hall to acknowledge and recognise the good work that they have done in the communities. In addition, in March, I will be hosting my county service in Ashby-de-la-Zouch, and members will receive an invite in due course. As this is the last full council of the year, I want to wish all members and officers a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and hopefully 2022 will be less eventful than the previous 2 years. Thank you. Right, we now move on to agenda item 2, minutes of the extraordinary meeting. You've got pages 3 to 4. I move the minutes of the extraordinary meeting of the council held on the 29th of September 2021. Copies which have been circulated to members to be taken as read, confirmed and signed. Dr. Feltham?
Seconded.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, the minutes of the ordinary meeting, page 5 to 22. I move the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the council held on the 29th of September 21, copies of which have been circulated to members and taken as read, confirmed and signed, subject to being noted in the chairman's announcement that Mr. Bill's 40 years of continuous service began in 1981. Dr. Feltham.
Seconded, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, we move on to item number 4, declarations of interest. I invite members who wish to do so make declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda for this meeting. Are there any declarations? Mr. Phillimore. Mr. Phillimore, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Agenda item 7 will be a personal interest. There are multiple references to special educational needs and disabilities, of which my wife is employed in that sector. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, please.
I'm not sure if I would also need to declare an interest. I work for a housing association that provides support for people with learning disabilities and mental health in Leicestershire. So item 7 too. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay, thank you. We now move to agenda item number 5, questions asked under Standing Order 7 bracket 1, 2 bracket and bracket 5. The questions in reply set out in the order paper will be taken as read and entered into the minutes. The supplementary, the question and reply set out in the order paper, I've been informed the supplementary question that Mr. Hunt on the response to question 3. Mr. Hunt, thank you.
Thank you. First of all, many thanks for the detailed answer and the wonderful map on page 5, which just reminds you of Passport to Pimlico, if those of us are old enough to remember that, where they used to stop the buses at the border. However, the substantial part of the answer says that we didn't form an enhanced bus partnership with the city, largely because the city has a denser population and they have more money. But I can't, for my life, realise why that would prevent us from working with an authority that had more money and more passengers for buses. Was there any other reason, or can the lead member supply any further information to that? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shea.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Hunt. I shall make sure that you get a written reply to explain your confusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 6 received position statements from the member of the Cabinet. I will now invite the leader to make his position statement. When the leader has finished his statement, I'll invite Mr Mullaney, then Mr Hunt, as leaders of the opposition to speak first. If you wish to speak, please raise your hands and then I will call you to speak. The leader, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I start, can I just explain to members why we're set out like this again, which is disappointing. We did want to be set out properly, but we have our own Director of Public Health here, who's well respected, and he recommended that we carry on sitting like this. So unfortunately, woe betide me if I don't take his recommendation. So I apologise for how we are, and hopefully by February we'll be able to have a more normal meeting. One thing I've not mentioned in my position statement, which I do want to mention, because I was only told this morning about 1 o'clock, is Ted Parton, member for Southfields, has received an award from LAMP, which is the Leicestershire Action for Mental Health Project. Ted was asked to go and personally pick it up today in Leicester at 2 o'clock. Ted is with us today and can't pick it up, so he'll be doing one virtually at 4:30. But I just want to say congratulations, Ted, well done. I do not propose to read my statement verbatim. You've all got it in front of you, and I'll just add a few bits and bobs as we go through. So on the county deal, we have had officer meetings with civil servants. Myself and Deborah had meetings with ministers online, as it happens, and we are waiting now to see what the government say. Apparently, they're going to make offers to the areas that have applied, based on things that you've offered them. And when we get it, I'll report it to members of this county council as soon as I can. They have been interested in our bid, so I'm told, for 2 reasons in particular. A, we did take the offer of an elected mayor. Whether you're for or against an elected mayor is a matter for another day. But if we do take an elected mayor, I think we will get offered more powers. So we'll have to wait and see what comes with an elected mayor. The other thing they were very interested in is obviously our integrated children's social care ideas. No other county, as far as I'm aware, has put that in their bid, and they were particularly interested in that. But we'll have to see what they say. And as I say in here, I've given a commitment to Michael and to Max that as soon as we get something, I'll let you have it. But it'll have to now wait till next year before we start looking at it and making any decisions. Fair funding is in here. We've done a lot of work on it. I won't say much about it because Lee will speak to you about it in a minute, but we're doing pretty well with the F20. I have a meeting later on this week with the leader of Surrey, Tim Oliver, and we've also got Hampshire involved. Now, the reason you want those is they're so-called mega counties, and they have a lot of influential members of Parliament. So if you speak to Tim, for instance, he's actually good friends with Michael Gove, which helps us. But we do have liberal councils. I think it's York and maybe one hanging around Somerset somewhere. And we do have Labour councils from the north. And it's very useful to have the Labour councils, if I'm honest, Max, because a lot of them are so-called red wall seats where you've got a Labour council and yet a Tory MP. So it's very useful to have them on board. On the integrated rail plan, you've all seen it. I just wanted to say a couple of matters which are more personal, more local in terms of North West Leicestershire. And I just want to support my own Member of Parliament, Andrew Bridgen, who spoke in Parliament the other day about the potential for... When you first saw the drawings for HS2, somewhere up towards Staveley, there was this huge depot where they were going to maintain all the HS2 track and trains and that sort of stuff. Now it's not going that far. That is now sacked off. So mine and Andrew's idea is they could put it at Ashby, because at Ashby they're building a big railhead there where they're going to actually put the stuff to build the blooming track. So instead of when they have finished building the track, just putting it all back to Fields, which is what it is now, it's actually between Ashby and Synope, we could use that infrastructure there for the rail maintenance depot. And also, whilst we've got that there, we should also continue to support, and is the Ivanhoe line with a connection from Leicester all the way through to Burton-on-Trent. That would help anybody from my area going to Leicester, and obviously it will help politically that we engage Staffordshire, because they're Burton-on-Trent, and Derbyshire. I know David Bill's the biggest rail buff here, and I'm not promising him any money, but what I am promising him is that I want to support Andrew Bridgen in his campaign to get the Ivanhoe line. And if you look at it, it is pretty small beer in the great scheme of things in terms of cost. One thing we do want to welcome again is the electrification. We knew it was going to make it in time to Market Harborough. It will now go to Leicester, and obviously it will be a massive benefit for members who represent Loughborough and the train line as it goes through the county. Tree strategy, again, a very, very important manifesto commitment. People are very keen on trees, they're very keen on carbon reduction. I will not say any more because I've asked Blake, who is our lead member for carbon reduction and tree strategy, to speak on that, so I'll leave that for Blake. Meeting with Charnwood MPs, again, I won't add anything to that because Deborah, my deputy, set it all up. All I can say, it was a very, very good meeting, and they were very, very friendly. And the last one is my normal one, just to tell you that although we haven't got a United Bus partnership, I do work with Sir Peter on all things which are, we tend to stick to things that doesn't have a lot of politics in, because 90% of the stuff you do as a county leader or a city leader is about just benefiting the people of Leicester and Leicestershire. So we generally stick to things where we can agree. I'm just reporting now that I had a meeting with Sir Peter. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Could I now call Mr Mullaney, please?
Thank you, Mr Chairman. So in terms of the county deal, obviously the position of the Liberal Democrat group has long been that Leicestershire is unfairly treated as the lowest funded county in the country. So we, in principle, support the county deal because we support anything that may bring investment into our county. We did have some reservations about the directly elected mayor part of it, and I do notice in the statement that I think we're alone in suggesting that, and the others were simply looking at an enhanced county leader role instead of a directly elected mayor. So that part we still have reservations and disagreements with, but we do agree in principle with the county deal. In terms of fair funding, if we can deliver real fair funding that really means that Leicestershire gets the funding that it deserves, then we would absolutely support that. In terms of what's being proposed here, it begins to make a difference. It helps a bit. It alleviates some of the worst of the injustices in terms of putting in a floor in terms of funding and so on, but it doesn't go as far or anywhere near as far as we think it should go in terms of delivering fair funding for Leicestershire. So whilst we give this a welcome, obviously there's still a lot more the government can do to properly ensure that people in Leicestershire get the fair funding for their services that they deserve. In terms of the tree strategy, we agree with the objectives on that. And in terms of the railways, in terms of the Midland Main Line, something we've long supported. It was something that was being pushed in the coalition government. Then in 2015, when the Conservatives governed alone, they announced a pause to the work on electrifying the Midland Main Line. Then they resumed it, and then after 2017 election, they paused it again. Now they're saying they're going to deliver it again. If it is delivered, great, because we want to see cleaner, greener, faster trains through Leicester and Leicestershire and the rest of the East Midlands, but obviously in the past, unfortunately, we have been let down by the stop-start approach of the government towards this project. So hopefully that will be delivered, and about time too. So that's all I have to say, so thank you.
Thank you. Could I now call Mr Hunt, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. I haven't got very much to say on this except that I have great admiration for the work that's been done behind the scenes, which Nick has ably set out in these separate paragraphs. On the county deal, again, I haven't much to say, except that every time I ask Nick about it, he's been to a sort of séance with ministers down in Whitehall, and he's come back with some possibilities and vague news and a bit of ether. Oh yes, and I was emailed the other day by somebody from the Leicester Citizen, is that right? Asking me who I thought should be the county mayor. Well, I thought Peter Soulsby would be the best idea, because Peter could then work very closely with Nick. on the county as well as the city. We'd have a sort of unity and enhanced a partnership. So we'll have to see what they say. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I call now Mr. Payne, please?
Thank you, Chairman. As the leader said that I'd stand and speak about the progress we're making on the tree strategy, I'm grateful for the leader for putting that segment into his statement today. Just so all members are aware, this is a huge project that we're embarking upon. We currently hand out or plant around 20,000 trees a year. So clearly, to plant 700,000 trees, we need to be realistic in terms of timescale. So we've chosen 10 years, which will mean we need to ramp up our efforts to 70,000 trees a year. And I'm pleased to report that we have a plan to do just that this year, to plant 70,000 trees. Our offices are busy applying for grants of all sorts of funds, notably the Forestry Commission's Treescape Fund, and we've just been awarded some money to plant an extra 20,000 trees. So we do have plans this year to meet our plan and programme moving forward. But it's not going to be easy. That's why we're going to have to work in partnership with community tree wardens and community groups more generally. And I'm pleased to say that I met the chairman of the National Forest last week, where we planted a tree at a school in Groby to sign a charter together, so we can work in partnership and seek their advice, take their advice, so we can utilise that for the benefit of the whole of Leicestershire. I've had numerous emails about consideration to the beauty of trees. There are some people out in our communities that think that all the trees that we do plant are a bit too green. They'd like to see more colour, and I think that's a fair comment. So we're looking at a variety of species, particularly in our urban areas where we can plant trees that have berries and a more colourful appearance. So the types of species we're talking about are oak, wild cherry, silver birch, field maple, and both blackthorn and hawthorn. Now, as if you hadn't had enough about trees already, we are in National Tree Week. It started last Saturday, so towards the end of National Tree Week. But again, we're in the progress of putting a website together, an interactive website, where people out there in Leicestershire can not only tell us if they're planting a tree, and we'll have a totaliser on that website so we can capture the public's efforts too, but it'll also be very informative to those that are interested about all sorts of things to do with trees. And we hope to launch that in the next few weeks, I'm told. So there's lots of progress being made. This is a huge challenge, a huge commitment by the Leicestershire County Council. It will offer well-being benefits as well as climate change benefits to Leicestershire and beyond. But it's something that we should be extremely proud to be doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I now call Mrs. Taylor, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have to say, Max, you have made me laugh today. I'm not sure you quite fully understood the county deal yet, but there's obviously still time for us. But thank you for making me smile today. Just an update really on our meeting with Mr Agar and Mrs Hunt MPs. I'm very grateful for them to giving up their time to come into County Hall to see us both. It was a very friendly and very useful meeting. We discussed many local issues and raised concerns with both of them, mainly about fair funding and the adult and social care. I think for me it's very important that our MPs understand how processes and services are run on the front line, to ensure they understand the multiple pressures that local authorities are under at the moment. I think on the county deal they were very supportive, and they fully understand that the pressures that we're under here as a county, and I look forward to them lobbying for us back in Parliament to ensure that we get within the first wave of county deals to make sure that we can do much more work for our residents within the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I now call Mr Brecken, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Just picking up on what the leader said about fair funding. No doubt the council will face some tough budgets over the coming years. MTFS report to Cabinet on the 14th of December will show in detail just how tough the coming years will be. Medium term, there's no doubt we do need a game-changing initiative to stabilise our financial position. I'm sure that all members are behind the fair funding campaign. The way local authorities like Leicestershire have been treated over the years is truly shocking. If we were funded at the same level as the highest funded inner London authority, we would be in the order of £300 million per year better off. As the leader says, our latest initiative has been to establish the F20, a group of authorities who are all low funded. We intend to ramp up our campaign over the coming weeks. We have already written to the Secretary of State, Michael Gove, and intend to continue to press for a meeting with him and his department to explain our proposals. The F20 is a mixed group ranging from large counties like Hampshire to a small unitary like Warrington. The councils, as the leader says, vary in political control with all the parties covered, Labour, Lib Dems and Conservative. They also have some very well-known MPs who represent their own authorities. It is really pleasing that our Leicestershire MPs are behind us all, and we will keep you all posted. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I now call Mr Bray, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just very briefly, it's on trees, actually. Great news, we support this entirely. The lead member mentioned a lot of partnerships. What he didn't mention was the districts. Can the leader, when he stands up, confirm that actually one of the partners is the districts? Because I know Hinckley officers have told me that they are regularly reporting their tree figures, planted figures in, so they can be included as part of the wider 700,000 figure. And I think it makes perfect sense, and I totally support that working with districts on that, but I think we need to be transparent, and that's what we're doing.
Thank you. Could I now call Mr O'Shea, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to put on record my thanks on behalf of Ratby Parish Council to the County Council for providing numerous hedgerows, plants and also trees that they picked up from Bow Manor Hall this week, and they are very grateful, and we will be supporting the tree campaign. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, yes, Mr Poland, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say I think it's incredibly welcome news about the integrated rail plan. Obviously, whilst disappointing to the more northern counties that some of the eastern leg won't be going ahead of HS2, it's great news for Leicestershire that it plans currently to come as far as East Midlands Parkway. The fact it's so close to the airport, I think, could make it a really strategic location for location of businesses and obviously workers that come with it, as it will be a high-speed link not only to the West Midlands but also to London. But I think from a resident's point of view, what's equally welcome, if not more welcome actually, is the news of the electrification of the Midland Main Line. My understanding is that will cut journey times from the north of the county down to London to potentially under an hour, which again brings Leicestershire into a place where it would be a good place to invest because it's easy commutable to London. So combined, these two factors combined really is very, very positive news for our county, and especially those of us in the north of the county. So yeah, just wanted to put on record that. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I now call Mr King, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So what as the member for Market Harbour West and Foxton, I wanted to welcome the leader's comments about the electrification of Midland Main Line. It's something that myself and other residents and businesses in the Market Harbour area have been campaigning for many number of years, including previous member for Market Harbour West and Foxton, who sat the other side of the chamber now. Also, just wanted, this will build on the £53 million investment that was made a couple of years ago into straightening the line at the railway station and revamping the station. But also, I'd like to thank the leader and the cabinet member for Waste for resolving the issue in the last week or so about the temporary opening hours of the Market Harbour recycling facility to compensate for the closure of the Kibworth tip, which, as colleagues may know, is going to be closed for about a year because the County Council is investing £5 million to make it easier for people to recycle. So that's a very welcome thing, and I thank the leader and cabinet member and the officers for sorting that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, yes, yeah, yeah. Mr Rushton, please, if you'd like to respond.
Thank you. Just briefly, can I thank Michael for his generally supportive comments, and as I say, I'll keep him informed. Max, well, I don't go to seances with ministers. I do go to a lot of meetings down there. On the city mayor taking over, I like him, as you know, get on well with him, but this is a county deal, and it's for the county, for the benefit of the county and for the benefit of the residents of the county. And the only way the city mayor and the city can benefit is if we get the deal and we can offer them so-called sidecar deals, which we'd want to on certain aspects, because you go out of here and you go past the island, you're in Leicester. So if you're doing something on the A511, you'd want to work with them, same as on public health and things like that. So don't worry, you're not getting Sir Peter here, Max. Blake, excellent speech. As you know, it was in our manifesto. It's a key job you've got. The only thing I'd like you to mention occasionally, because they are important, is so-called urban trees. You know, it's very easy to plant them out in areas where I represent, or Robert represents, where it's old coalfields or whatever, but urban trees and trees in schools are particularly important. And I've been to visit a couple of sites in the middle of Colville, and they really do make a difference. Deborah, thank you for your ongoing good work, and it is Deborah's contacts with the two Loughborough and Charnwood MPs which does help us, so thank you very much, Deborah. Lee, again, an excellent report, and you'll see the numbers coming through the budget in due course. Stuart, yeah, well, of course we want to work with districts. Districts are the planning authority, so we can encourage districts to encourage the developments to put in trees. And also, really, Stuart, if we're on this, we want to count those trees towards our target. They're not just Leicestershire County Council trees. This is a pledge to the people of Leicestershire that these trees will be provided. So I don't mind who provides them, if I'm honest. So the answer is yes, Stuart. James, thank you for mentioning Loughborough. It's very, very important electrification is for Loughborough, same as it is for the King of Harborough. And Phil, thanks very much for complimenting us on dealing with your waste site. I know it'll be a problem shutting Kibworth. As you point out, Kibworth is very, very expensive to do. We are doing it, and I think it's the one in Market Harbour. It'll be open 7 days a week. One of the problems in replying to you more quickly, Phil, and you contacted me as the leader of Harborough, is we're a bit short of staff. You know, we've got 30% vacancies in some areas, so they had to work around it to make it work. But as you rightly compliment us, it will now work. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We now move to agenda item number 7, the report of the Cabinet Annual Delivery Performance Compendium. That's pages 23 to 196. I call on Mr Rushton to move that motion.
Chairman, can I formally move the motion, as reminded by Rosemary that I've got to, rather than just talk about it? So I formally move it, Rosemary. It is good news. We are doing well with little money. I know there was some criticism at scrutiny that it was a little bit long. It is long, but generally it is full of good news. Lee will speak in detail about it, not me, but can I place on record my thanks to Andy Brown. I think we all know Andy Brown. We don't see much of him except when he presents these things, but I think he does a lot of good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I now call on Mr Brecken to second, please?
I think the good news is for members, I won't be talking too long on it. Like the leader has said, I was going to thank Andy and his team. I think really when you read the report, I know it is a long-winded report, but it really is a tribute to all the staff and members of Leicestershire County Council as to what we have achieved. And I think we've achieved this in a full pandemic year. This is what we do as a county council. I'm more than happy to second it and, as I say, thank the officers for the work they do. Taking on board the comments regarding perhaps we could have an executive summary that members could use. Certainly throughout the year, I use the full report because I think it gives us details of what we have achieved and how we operate. And it certainly answers a lot of questions I get through my inbox. So happy to second.
Thank you. Could I now call Mr Hunt, please?
Thanks very much, Chair. I just want to say a few words about each of the main topics on paragraph 10. But first of all, to genuinely thank the officers and cabinet members who have lost some of their heavyweights, if you like, in the last elections with the loss of Ivan and Byron. And we know what a tough job it is, and not of our making, made in Westminster. So on the first topic, which is economic development, I think the work undertaken by Tom Purnell's team is absolutely fantastic, and you can see the projects in which that team is involved. I just want to point out one or two differences about Labour's approach to this, and we are not particularly happy with the move of the CAFE Investment Fund, which was, if you remember, a project to invest some of our reserves into the Leicestershire and local economy for a return, not unreasonably, including, for example, the solar farm that was being created at Corn. But the move of CAFE seems to be towards international or city investments, the primary aim of getting a return, a highest possible return, as opposed to investing it locally. They were concerned about that. In transport, we work hard again to fulfil the road programmes and, and publish these plans for buses and cycles and walking and so on. But behind that, there never seems to be a transport plan for this authority. We seem to be a good bidding authority. Whatever's going, we'll bid for it. If they want a plan, we'll do a plan. But unlike the city, for example, I have to say, who have taken bold decisions, for example, with their workplace parking, not popular in the city any more than here, I would dare to say. We dumped our parking strategy. We don't have a parking strategy. So I think there's a gap in what we do in transport. And we're looking forward to seeing at LTP4 to put some strategy on what we do. On the environment agenda, we're not moving fast enough. And the Labour Group believe we should be working particularly faster with the population at large and not the quick wins that we can find within the county operations. Yes, they followed our lead on the tree planting. We fully support that. We'll go on doing that. But pictures in Leicestershire Matters do not make for progress. It has to be changes in lifestyle, which is a very difficult thing to achieve, but it's the job that we've undertaken by declaring the emergency. On children's services, I think the first tragedy in this whole debacle is the children. The children are the ones that are suffering, and we're suffering for having to pick up a bill that we can't pay. But keep our minds firmly on the children. And in the Labour Group, we naturally lament the loss of Sure Start, which gave children, that best start, which has avoided the problems that we're currently seeing in society generally. And on education, the move to independent academies, we can see that now. It's not improved education as such. Education continues in its way in Leicestershire. But the schools that are struggling, I won't mention them, but there are several schools, secondary and primary, that struggle in this authority, in this county, have no way of being levelled up. Levelling up is not just for the north, it's for our schools. And finally, on this slightly sort of nebulous area, Mr. Richardson would disagree, of communities, we used to have, well, first of all, I'd say that the information that's come through on communities has been excellent, and the funding that is available to worthy organisations. But there doesn't seem to be an overall picture in the papers we receive about what the county is. And you'll have seen in the wonderful little map that we saw that a quarter of the population in the county lives within the city-urban area, the city-urban transport area, whatever you like to call it. And they have issues in common with the city, and the city have issues in common with us, and transport is one of the ones. But it was not mentioned in the strategy that went forward to 2050. We talked about the city rim and we talked about the city in that. It was a joint paper, but we didn't link the two. And on communities, there's endless repetition of the importance of working with towns and parishes. But a third of the county residents don't live in those areas. And one feels that they're not always well represented in the surveys and the consultations that take place. Not through any sort of intention, but simply because the structures aren't there, but we need to find other ways of communicating with those communities, many of which are diverse and surrounding the university or surrounding the wonderful Magna Park hub of what do you call it? Logistics. It's the logistics centre of the East Midlands, shortly to be overtaken by another logistics centre north of Loughborough. So, we have a very interesting patchwork of communities, and I feel sometimes they're not always as represented as they might be. But other than that, I think, you know, there's a lot of hard work and a lot of results, and a lot of plans about plans, you know, in this paper, which is to be commended, and we will support it for all the hard work the officers have done. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to now call Mrs Radford, please.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to John Wilson and his team for the work that he's done in the adult section. As noted in the report, the last 18 months have been tumultuous time for a department. The pandemic has impacted on every area of the department service, be that in adult social care or in heritage, library and learning services. Staff have worked above and beyond their normal roles to continue to deliver high quality services to the people across the county. Many staff have stepped outside their normal duties, working flexibly to respond to the COVID crisis. Our care providers have responded magnificently to keep people safe and support people in new and innovative ways. I seem to be having trouble with my words. Must put my different teeth into. However, we cannot underestimate the impact the pandemic has had on services and people, with over 2/3 of the care homes experiencing an outbreak and significant number of people sadly succumbing to the virus. Notwithstanding the pandemic, the department has worked hard to continue to deliver services and has built upon the work to develop a new operating model which has seen increased numbers of people being served, and in particular more people help to live independently at home. We have continued to invest in accommodation-based support and have developed new opportunities for people to live independently and with support in their homes, and in fact the chairman's been out to have a look at some of these. We have begun to develop our digital capabilities through a new care technology partnership which will help to build on the strong foundation we have in personalised care and support. Our library, heritage and learning services showed an excellent response to the pandemic, developing new ways of working and connecting with people, and are now recovering enhanced offers to help to reach more children. And in fact, I visited the Gartree Library to see how we supported the prisoners during the pandemic, keeping them with reading books because they couldn't go online. There is no doubt it has been a difficult year all round, but we can look back with some pride in the way we and our partners rose to the challenge. And I would like to support what Nick said earlier, to congratulate my cabinet support team person, Ted Parton, and his award for work that he does with mental health residents. Thank you.
Yeah. I'd like to now call Mrs Newton, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to talk to page 90. It's really in support of vulnerable children and SEND. It's paragraph 52 of the actual report. We are now approaching our second Christmas under the long shadow of COVID pandemic, made even worse by the latest news about the arrival of the Omicron variant. Whether or not we will have another lockdown is difficult to say, but the reality is that the pandemic's impact stretches well beyond lockdowns. There is, for example, the cumulative effect of 2 years of disruption or suspension of services in education, health, and the stress of having our lives upended and perhaps suffering from or even losing loved ones to COVID. The stop-start nature of all of this has left many people feeling exhausted while they try to carry on as normal supporting their families. There is almost universal agreement that the impact of the pandemic has been most dramatic on children's mental health, especially those children who are classified as disabled or clinically vulnerable. A considerable amount of research over the past 18 months has shown the extent of which COVID has had an impact on disabled children and their families. In particular, the plight of children with special education needs. This is our SEND agenda. That has been well researched and documented, most notably by the Psychology Department of John Moores University in Liverpool. Their research has highlighted the dramatic increase in requests for education, health and care plan assessments since March 2020. These increases could be replicated throughout the country and are really likely to grow in the next year or so. So there's going to be very high demand on us as a council. It is generally accepted now that the impact of lockdowns, school closures and children having to study at home, sometimes in very difficult domestic circumstances, really has an impact on children's mental health and indeed the very well-being of children in general, especially those children, as I said, with learning difficulties and special needs. Moreover, school closures, social distancing and home confinement also increase the risk of poor nutrition amongst children, their exposure to domestic violence and their stress levels. Immediate government measures need to ensure that children have access to good food, receive protection against abuse and neglect, have continued access to children's physical and mental health services, and can navigate safely on the internet, because with children being at home more, they're actually using the internet more, and that's not really been monitored the way it ought to be. We also need policies to support parental employment, since this is really the key to fighting child poverty. Good wages and decent jobs for parents do make a difference to the lifestyles of children. Based on current information, it's very unlikely that this county council, when it rolls forward its MTFS plan into 2025-26, will be able to identify sufficient savings to bridge the funding gaps in later years. This financial situation will require the government to deal with the structural issues such as funding for social care and the relentless growth in demand for special educational needs and disabilities. This is the SEND agenda, and the SEND agenda to some extent is really under very high pressure, so it's something we really need to keep an eye on. And as I said, this is a problem that's not going to go away anytime soon, and even now needs serious consideration. As the local government association pointed out recently, supporting and protecting vulnerable children is one of the most important roles played by councils who want to ensure that all children are safe, loved and will thrive. Finally, while it's all too easy to highlight the negative points surrounding the pandemic, it's important that this is balanced by reference to the good work being done in very difficult circumstances by councils like ours, on very low budgets, by so many dedicated and hard-working people. And can we at this point give a shout out for those social workers and others working in children's social care who actually go beyond their yard description to ensure that children get what they need from this council. Thank you.
Now call Mrs Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we all acknowledge this is a very long but also very important document, and I often refer back to our annual delivery and performance report throughout the year if I need to check for some further information. But I do think it's important that this document is read not only by councillors but also our partners and residents. I'm very sure that in this current format not many people do actually read it. I've therefore asked that next year we look at a more readable version of this report and an executive summary. But we also have to have this full document available for anyone who would like to read it in its entirety. I'd also just like to highlight some of the work done under my portfolio. So as I'm sure you're all aware, it's been a very difficult year with the pandemic still very much in circulation. Safeguarding children is the most important work we do, and we have ensured that by working with our partners, we have procedures in place for multi-agency safeguarding in line with Working Together 2018. In November 2019, Ofsted published a report on children's social care services. The report identified considerable progress made since the last inspection in 2017, with ratings for supporting children in care and leadership improved to good. In February 2020, we considered a further report on the inspection and agreed a further action plan to address the recommendations in that report. We've worked incredibly hard since 2017 under my predecessor, Ivan Old, and myself, and I'm confident that this department is very close to receiving an improved Ofsted rating at our next inspection. We currently support circa 500 children who are subject to child protection plans. We did see a big increase in numbers subject to plans in the first wave of the pandemic. In August 2020, the number stood at 699. The situation has now stabilised with the return to the support of family networks and key agencies. I hope this continues to be stable, especially as we're now entering a more uncertain time with the pandemic, but we will ensure that children are protected. Our Defining Children's Services for the Future, where we commissioned a major project in partnership with our consultants, Newton Europe, to ensure that our services are the most effective and efficient they can be in improving outcomes for vulnerable children. We are now in the implementation phase of the project, and the changes in practice are working well, and we're beginning to see the impact of improved services for our children. We are continuing our partnership with Bernardo's, and this partnership is about to enter its 3rd year. It continues to grow, and we have another exciting year ahead of us, with new specialist provisions opening to care for our young people in their own communities. Our Place to Call Home project, launched in October 2020, another initiative is supporting recruiting of foster carers. This is a joint project with the 9 East Midlands local authorities, with this council being the lead council. Aims to place unaccompanied asylum seeker children in the homes in the country in which they arrived. The project seeks to recruit 40 foster carers and supported lodging providers across the region. The project is working extremely well, and we are on target with the help of our partner local authorities. Leicestershire has also been supporting the government in housing and supporting unaccompanied asylum seeking children arriving on the Kent coast. We have taken children throughout the year, and we're in the process of welcoming another 2 children urgently in the next few weeks. These will be very vulnerable children under 16 years old who have had very difficult journeys before arriving on the Kent coast. I just want to pick up on the point Max made about the Sure Start centres. So that those centres there didn't really support the children that we needed it to support. It was more people that didn't need that support. So by closing the buildings, we might have lost some buildings, but we haven't lost any services. And in fact, we've increased those services to our vulnerable children. So your comments are not really true. They are buildings, they're not services that we've lost. The global pandemic has expected that, young people are in need of care, and we'll make sure we do everything we can to support them. We also continue with our adoption and fostering services, as well as many more services I could mention if I had the time. I'm very proud of our Children and Families Department, and I'm very proud to lead them. We have excellent leadership and many members of staff who go above and beyond to support our children. At the heart of our department is the voice of the child, and we will do all we can to support the most vulnerable in our society. I hope you'll take some time to read more in the report about the work with children and families, but I'd like to take this opportunity to personally thank each and every one of the staff within this department for their hard work under such difficult times.
Thank you. I'd now like to call Mrs. Richardson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to highlight some of the work done in public health. And I think that the response for COVID-19 pandemic from our staff highlighted the vital importance of local public health services. There's been a significant workload in communications and engagement, testing, enforcement and compliance, as well as supporting the clinically extremely vulnerable. And I do want to thank Mike Sands, Director of Public Health, and all his consultants, and indeed all officers of the Council who have gone above and beyond their normal work for this pandemic. Other work included the setting up of local contact tracing services and detailed outbreak investigation and control, and incident management teams. A new health protection team was established to provide support to settings with outbreaks, and 2 new teams to support contact tracing and provision of community support. The rolling out of testing for those without symptoms who are unable to work from home, and then to all residents over the age of 12. And within the space of 4 weeks, 7 sites were in operation, and 44,000 tests had been carried out, and 110,000 home test kits issued. And significant work has also been done, been completed to support the vaccine uptake. We continued with First Contact Plus, developing the social prescribing model and offer, the integrated healthier lifestyle services, including weight management and stop smoking services, local area coordinators, NHS health checks, recommissioned substance misuse service, including detox and residential rehab, and 2 new grants. We had the sexual health strategy, the workplace health programme, homelessness prevention and housing related support, and a new wider determinants of health action plan was approved in June 21. Child health services, including the 0 to 19 Healthy Child programme, breastfeeding and maternity support, early years and childcare service, healthy schools and healthy talks programmes, including wellbeing for education recovery to support pupils' mental health. With regards to mental health, the Better Care Together mental health work stream, Healthier in Mind strategy, Start a Conversation, and Are You OK websites, and new self-harm reduction service, mental health first aid training, adult learning courses, emotional wellbeing curriculum pack, and routes to resilience approach and local suicide prevention plans. And a successful bid will see the employment of suicide prevention officers and development of mental health friendly communities. It's been a challenging year for physical activity delivery due to COVID-19, but it has stimulated new ways of working, including healthy at-home activity videos and packs, live online sessions, holiday activity and food programmes delivered at 28 school sites, £146,000 distributed to 31 organisations to support local clubs and groups, virtual school games, Paralympic festival and sports challenges. This Girl Can activity sessions, 45 clubs and organisations were supported through the SOS Fund in the Active Together campaign. So I'm very proud of the work that the department has done through this year. And can I also, just as I'm on my feet, just draw everyone's attention to the draft Joint Health and Wellbeing Strategy that's out for consultation until the 23rd of January 22. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I now call Mrs. Hack, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks again to the officers for providing such a comprehensive report. I found it incredibly useful, particularly the summary work that goes on. It's quite clear the impact of COVID has never really been far away, and we've talked about it in this chamber many times, and Councillor Richardson has quite eloquently put together the work that's been done in public health. However, I just wanted to follow on from my colleague, Councillor Newton, just with regards to concerns around SEND. And I think this for me is where fair funding and the gaps of SEND, it's not just about those councils that are bidding for fair funding, it's actually felt across the whole breadth of councils. So what nationally local councils funding in the high needs bottom was operating approximately a £2 billion deficit. It's got to be a continued concern. And the work of this council to review SEND in this report has been excellent, but it really worries me that it can't go far enough. We still don't have enough resources to meet what we really want to get to. My real question is, how do we manage the shortfall here in Leicestershire, and what reassurances can the leader provide about how we approach this going forward? And particularly in light of the fact that already reported to this council in July, we were going to request money was transferred from the school's educational money to the SEND budget to plug a gap. Although it must be said, like all things Leicestershire, the funding offer per pupil is much less here than elsewhere across England. This is coupled with the recalculation of the free school meal census point, which led to a funding cut, as reported the Children and Family Scrutiny in June, that in Leicestershire we lost approximately £950,000 to our school budgets. How is this going to be managed long term? And how is this going to be funded? It's not just about fair funding, it's much, much wider than that. I often struggle when we talk about fair funding because it often comes across as being around parity. Actually, in my view, it needs to be around need, and where do we need to gain more funding locally, and what would give us the greatest benefit. What I found was quite interesting on page 132, it outlines the issue really succinctly with a single phrase from the Housing Communities and Local Government Select Committee. It says, councils have little choice but to provide bare bones services. I think we aspire to more, and I think that the report shows that we do aspire to more. But it does worry me that it says it alongside that the funding has been gutted for non-essential services such as transport, housing, culture. I think we'd all disagree and say they were essential services, particularly here in Leicestershire, transport being huge, but housing and culture is so important to the fabric of our society. So whilst I welcome the report, I do really worry about the second phase of the report, which really goes on about the concerns we've got about local government funding, not just here in Leicestershire.
Thank you. I'd now like to call Mr Payne, please.
Once again, many thanks, Mr Chairman. I wasn't going to speak to this item, but I just would like to respond to a comment that Max made about the work of the environment agenda. I thought the report spoke for itself with the admirable list of achievements within the report that have been ongoing throughout the year in terms of the environment and green agenda. And therefore, I don't think it's fair that Max took a particularly critical approach to that work. I accept, because I respect Max and I respect his passion for all environmental matters, that Max would like us and everyone else to go as quickly as possible. But the fact is, this council has reduced its carbon emissions by 70% over the last 6 or 7 years. We have about 12,000 tonnes left of our own emittance that we need to deal with. And it will be hard to deal with, but we're confident by 2030, which is our pledge, we will deal with that. Wider Leicestershire, and we've made no secret of this, is going to be very difficult. Depending on what indices and what metrics you use, there's between 4 and 8 million tonnes of carbon to be dealt with. We are bringing forward our own environment strategy in the new year, but I think it's worth noting that the government only 3 weeks ago passed their environment bill. The reason we are bringing our strategy forward next year is because we need to revise our ongoing strategy to make sure that we are complying with measures in the bill. And for the benefit of this meeting, I had a briefing note done for me a couple of weeks ago about the bill, and I think it might be worth just reminding members what that bill actually means, because it's important law, this is, for this whole country. The legislation in the Environment Act will improve air and water quality, reduce waste, increase recycling, increase biodiversity, improve the natural environment and make better use of resources. The Environment Act will halt the decline in species by 2030, tackle deforestation overseas and require new developments to improve or create habitats for nature. It will also enable waste reforms such as weekly food waste collections, a deposit return scheme for single-use drink containers and extended producer responsibility for packaging, which makes producers pay the full net cost of managing packaging, including recycling and disposal. And the Act will place new or extended duties and responsibilities on local government in areas such as local nature recovery, biodiversity, air quality and waste. This is profound stuff, and what I want to say to Max is we'll be measured by now a new office that the government is setting up, the Office of Environmental Protection. So hopefully our plans not only will discharge our commitment to Leicestershire, which is to be carbon neutral by 2030 and help Leicestershire more widely to become carbon neutral by 2045. But this needs to be measured in line with the government agenda and their new Office for Environmental Protection. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call Mr Parton.
Okay. The Adults and Communities strategic statement says that the following must be met in order to be classed as delivering on people's priorities. And it states, to provide and commission high quality, so not quality, high quality, services that enrich the lives of individual people, families and their communities. And we'll do this via adult social care, community wellbeing services and adult learning services. So how has the Adults and Communities Department fared? Now, an analogy is a 7-time gold medal Olympic athlete was asked at the Tokyo Games this year how he handled stress and pressure. And he responded, stress is bad, however the pressure is good. And the Adults and Communities Department, make no mistake, is under huge pressure. However, like this Olympic swimmer, we also thrive underneath it. And remember, we are the worst funded county council and yet the second best performing. So let's delve deeper. Overall, the council's performance is high performance, low spend. And adults and communities is just on the high performance bracket. And this is incredible considering how low spend and the 8 survey-based factors that did place A&C just in the lower quartile can all be attributed to the low funding levels we receive and also the COVID pandemic. In other words, councils that receive more spend more on services. And we perform in this department to such a standard that should funding be available, it would propel LCC, adults and communities, if not to the top, but right near to it in the tables. And the focus is now on working every day to improve the following: people remaining at home 91 days after discharge, reablement service, users receiving self-directed support and cash payments, dementia diagnosis rates, and gap in employment for those in secondary mental health services. And ladies and gentlemen, the plans for all of those, to address those, are all here on pages 9, 10, and 25 to 33 and 7A. So there's the areas of improvement. Let's pick out some highlights. Community and wellbeing services. At Christmas, we think of all those sleeping rough. Well, we support the Falcon Centre and the Bridge in Loughborough all year round, not just at Christmas, meeting the homelessness need. And you will have read that the library figures in Appendix B, page 69, show 3 criteria are in red. Now, all of those would have been in green had it not been for the lockdowns in COVID. And lest we not forget the 35 community libraries. The Council's Communities Fund provided 379 grants totalling £2.6 million. Shire Community Grants awarded 74 grants totalling £397,000. 5,000 e-books and audio books added to our collections. £71,000 to assist the heritage sector following the pandemic. The regenerated Snibston Heritage Site and Trail and Cafe. COVID-19 Memorial at Watermead. Exhibitions at all museums in Bosworth, Charnwood and over in the city at the Cathedral. Let's look at adult learning services. 4,110 learners. Now that's down from 6,749, but the lockdowns in COVID was the cause, and despite that, it's an impressive number, delivered out of 34 venues in the county. And we launched Work and Skills Leicestershire in June. We support the government's Kickstart scheme, where we recruited 24 young people. Apprenticeships. This council has taken on 29 apprentices. They've already trained 26 others, and there's 37 more in external employers. Now, we see the footage of people arriving to the UK in boats. And LCC is assisting the Vulnerable Persons Resettlement Scheme. Mrs Radford and I visited the Moira Centre in Loughborough and saw some of these courses in action for some of the refugees and migrants we are taking into our care in Leicestershire. And then the big one, adult social care. Now, many of you will have council-funded and built supported living facilities in your division, and I can think of Anstey, Markfield, Loughborough, and respite breaks at the Trees in Hinckley. Here's some figures for you. 90 adults with learning disabilities moved from residential to community living in the last year. Shared lives between 100 and 300, and I appreciate that's quite a big difference, benefiting from 77 carers who offer their homes, and what selfless sacrifice that is. Community life choices, which, let me reassure you, will continue. 650 people with a wide variety of needs through the day centre provision. The service ran virtually through COVID, it never stopped, and it's now returning to in-person almost completely now. And we have 180 care homes that we have oversight over. Across these centres and the home care provision packages, the workforce of carers in Leicestershire totals 15,000. And we helped with the Inspire to Care programme that we ran in October 2020. We saw 60 new people join the service over a 3-month period. That was 20 people we brought in each month. Lowest funded, yet still delivering these vital services across adult social care community, wellbeing services and the adult learning provision. So now you can decide. Has the Adults and Communities Department delivered its key objectives? Have we provided and commissioned high quality, not quality, high quality services? And have we enriched the lives of individual people, families and their communities? And did we do this via adult social care community, wellbeing and adult learning services? Well, the detail is all in here for you to make your decision. Finally, a story. A month ago, Mrs. Radford and I experienced the best moment of our council year so far. We appeared before a huge Teams meeting, before almost all of the Adults and Communities workforce. The number just kept ratcheting up. At one stage, it was over 500 in front of us. We thanked them, we empathised with them, and we told them how much we thought about them. And it's Mrs. Radford, these 500 people, the 15,000 workforce and the volunteers that I believe have ensured that our department has met those needs.
Thank you. I'd like to now call Mr. Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank John Wilson and his team in the adult social care, because I sit on the spokesperson of that, and it'll be remiss of me not to thank them for all the hard work continuing in COVID time. And yes, you know, this report, what have we seen today? It being presented, and then cabinet member, cabinet support member after cabinet support member, and cabinet member standing up and backslapping themselves. But we have to be realistic here. We have to be realistic as to what is happening. And yes, you're not going to convince anybody on your side that it's a good report because you've all bought into it, and you're probably not going to convince anybody on this side, on the Liberal Democrat side, that it's a fantastic report because we're probably doubting it is what it says. And it's important because we have to be realistic. And yes, adult and social communities have had a tough time. And what isn't in the report is actually we've rowed back, Help to Live at Home. Remember that about 4 years ago when it was being trumpeted as the next best thing for adult social care. Turned out to be a bit of a disaster. And then last year we've rowed back on it and we've gone all the way back to different providers in different areas. So that was 180 degrees about turn. You won't say that in the report, and the cost that is associated to it. What you won't say in the report is that we've probably lost 5% of the workforce in the care sector because of vaccinations, and rightly and wrongly so is to be debated. But when you're looking for staff and you can't get staff, the fact that you've had to let good people go, it's a shame. But we've dealt with that, and I think John Wilson and his team have kept close contact with those care homes that have been severely affected as well. But there are good things in the report as well, and I don't want to be standing up and saying whinging. And I think, and this is coming from a Labour guy, the free port around the airport has brought lots of employment and lots of opportunities for people in Leicestershire. But with that brings the challenges as well, housing. People who work around the area want to live close by. They don't want to commute an hour and a half to work. Buildings, traffic and congestion. And I know my side and Betty's side, try and go through Haddon on rush hour is nigh on impossible. It's so slow sometimes. And these are the challenges that we face. And I'd like that to be seen addressed and going in the future. So yes, the report is good. We accept that some of the things challenges faces that we've done really well on, but let's be realistic, it hasn't all been good, and there have been tough times, and officers have dealt with lots of things as well, people are going to see a different culture, different thing from the county council, because we can't afford to go on as we are. Adult social care would have been about 14-15 million overspent if the NHS hadn't bailed us out with a £5 million one-off grant. Still means 5 million overspent. Can't carry that on next year or the year after unless somebody else is willing to dip their hands in their pockets. So what we're going to provide is going to be leaner, unfortunately. So let's be realistic about it and let's tell people as it is. But let's get on with it. Thank you.
Okay. Could I call Mr Mullaney, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and thank you for those who put together the annual delivery report and performance compendium. It's got a lot of useful information and data in there, which I'm sure we've all found very fascinating. Really, my comments were really just to really say that in terms of the challenges facing Leicestershire, they really do tend to all come back to the whole issue of the lack of funding, not just of this county, but also of a lot of other public services as well. I note that on page 132 of the report, it says that according to the Confederation for British Industry, productivity is 8th out of the 9th lowest in the East Midlands region, and that is put down to education standards in the region. And obviously an issue that we have raised previously is that education is funded particularly badly in Leicestershire compared to much of the rest of the country, and that impacts upon social mobility levels often being low in parts of the county as well. So that's an area of concern. Also, on page 152, the report states, infrastructure, the financial risks faced by the council in delivering the infrastructure necessary to support growth in the county are significant. The reality is we're expected to build, as we know, large numbers of houses across the county upon the wishes of the government, but the reality is that not only is our county the worst funded, but also a whole range of other services, the police, the fire, education and other services, when you look at the amount that's given to Leicestershire, is generally well below the average for the rest of the country, and that obviously impacts upon the ability to deliver the infrastructure that will be required for the increasing population. So again, thank you for those who've put together the report. There's a lot of detailed information there, but it really does show that if we want our county to move forward, it is really time for not just this county, but also the other services across Leicestershire to be properly funded as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd now like to call upon Mr Rushton to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to start off with, I normally find Jewel a very happy, smiley person and nice to chat to and upbeat. All I can say to him today is you're a real Christmas Grinch, Jewel. And if what you say counts as support of the Labour group, I think that we'd prefer not to have it. Having said that, I think this is an excellent report, especially as we all know, we have suffered from COVID. I know everybody uses that as an excuse, but to do what we've done with COVID is exceptional. This administration, I've always told you, is committed to protecting the vulnerable. This administration went to the election in May with a 5% increase in council tax to protect the vulnerable. This administration was returned with the biggest majority it's had, as far as I can remember, in a long time. So we are proud of this report and we're proud of what we do. I thank Deborah for her knowledge in children's social care. It is absolutely excellent. And Betty, your knowledge is good as well, and I think you make some valid contributions. Can I also thank, while I'm on it, Christine and Ted. Again, brand new appointments to this post in COVID times. And I think both of them have done a very, very good job in there, and I congratulate myself for appointing them. We've also got Louise. Okay, Louise was in Cabinet before, but she's been moved to a very, very serious job that Lee used to do, and I think she's doing an excellent job in public health, along with Mike Sands, who's nationally respected for his work in the pandemic. So congratulations, Louise. And then finally to Max. Generally, I thought constructive remarks, Max, apart from on the CAFE. Now on the CAFE, Max, obviously, we'd like to invest, if possible, all in Leicestershire. We have a new strategic plan which puts 20% of assets into green assets, as you referred to, solar farms, etc. But we do need to make a return on this. This CAFE actually subsidises our council tax. And I've not got the exact figure, but I know it's in excess of £6 million a year that goes directly to subsidising the council tax. And if we didn't have the CAFE, We wouldn't be able to precept any more than we do because as an administration, I said we've always protected the vulnerable and taken as much money as the government allows us to take. So we would have to make savings if we didn't have the cave. And your minor criticism about us investing in some funds, anybody knows that the best portfolio you can have is a diverse portfolio. So we do have to diversify in the portfolio into some assets that are probably slightly more liquid than property assets. So that is why we're investing in these funds. You say the city does well in bidding. Well, it does, unfortunately, or fortunately for us. It is a city. It has more deprivation than us. So, you know, just recently he's got a whole load of money for the station. That should benefit all us guys who go to his station and use it. He's got the Zebra scheme, I think it is, for his electric buses and that. We can use them. They're not just for the people from Leicester. No, he just does better than us when it comes to bidding. And to help us deal with that, because as you rightly point out, Max, bidding costs us a lot of money and time. So as part of the county deal, is in fact we want to get them to roll up all these blooming little, Neil O'Brien calls them penny pots. They're not penny pots, but over the years, the government has got into this agenda where it likes everybody to bid for everything, and they forget that it costs an arm and a leg to bid. So in the county deal, we want to stop bidding and just give us a lump sum and trust us to spend it. They may well say in the offer we've got to spend it on X, Y, and Z, but it'll certainly be more efficient than constantly bidding. You're granted on that. On SEND, we all know it's a problem, Amanda. Ministers know it's a problem. Deborah certainly knows it's a problem. I'm glad you recognise it, but I think everybody in here recognises that SEND is a real problem. And my green champion, Blake, so thank him for his work. And in case you didn't know, Blake's getting married next week. So if you don't know, if you'd like to offer him your congratulations. He hasn't told anyone, but now you all know. So with that, I think I've mentioned everybody I wanted to mention. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, we will now take a vote on the motion on the order paper. All those in favour show now. Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you. Right, agenda item number 8, the report of the Corporate Governance Committee, appointment of external auditors, 23 to 24, pages 197 to 206. I invite Mr Barclay to move the motion and Mr Richardson to second. Thank you, Mr Barclay.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the County Council accepts Public Sector Audit Appointments Limited invitation to opt into the sector-led option for the appointment of external auditors for the 5 years commencing the 1st of April 2023. There are a limited supply of external auditors, and this is the best way of assuring that we have a qualified registered auditor to audit our accounts. The report is very straightforward, it's clear, and this is the logical, sensible outcome that we would wish. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I call on Mr Richardson to second, please?
Fully support the comments made by Mr Barclay and second, Mr Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, very brief and succinct. Thank you. There's no other speakers, so we'll now take a vote on the motion on the order paper. All those in favour, please show. Unanimous. Thank you. Right, we move on now to item B of the Code of Conduct Protocol on Member/Officers Relation, pages 207 to 245. Mr Barclay to move the motion and Mr Richardson to second the motion. Mr Barclay, please.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the revised Code of Conduct as set out in Appendix A to this report be approved and adopted, and that the revised protocol on member-officer relations as set out in Appendix B to the report be approved and adopted. This Code of Conduct has been out for widespread consultation. Everybody has had a chance to comment. There are slight amendments. In the main, it's just setting out logical and the sort of behaviour that you would expect, and there is little more to say. If it were to be changed and sanctions required to be racked up, it would require primary legislation through Parliament, but we are where we are. We've consulted with the districts on this. The idea is to have a commonality between our Code of Conducts and district Code of Conducts, because there are a number of dual hatters, but I don't think there is anything in the report which would come as a surprise to members. And again, I commend this to members.
Thank you. I now call upon Mr. Richardson to second.
Again, I associate myself with the comments made by Mr. Barclay and second.
Thank you. I now call upon Mr. Bolter, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's an interesting report. Hope all the districts do adopt it, so we've got a common thing throughout the whole county. However, it's still got no teeth. We talked about this for years. We thought this time we'd have some teeth. It's got no teeth. A member could completely ignore what they said and just carry on. And that's what I find disagreeable.
Thank you. No, nobody else. Yeah. Mr. Barclay again, please, to respond.
I certainly don't think that our members are going to ignore it. I do take Mr. Bolter's point. The sanctions could be stepped up, but as I stated, it would require legislation through Parliament, and at the moment that's not going to be forthcoming. But in interim, I would be shocked in the extreme if members didn't act in any other way apart from in accordance with the Code of Conduct. It's just rational, reasonable behaviour, and we've never had any difficulty in the past. Well, maybe we have, but not that I'm aware of, and it makes absolute sense to me.
Thank you. Right, I will now take the vote on the motion on the order paper. All those in favour show. Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you. Right, agenda item number 9, the report of the Constitution Committee, the review and revision of the Constitution, pages 247 to 270. Mr. Rushton to move the motion and Mrs. Taylor to second.
Chairman, I formally move motion 1 at little a and the procedural motion 2 at B. Thank you.
Thank you. Call upon Mrs. Taylor to second.
Very happy to second motion 1 little a and motion 2 little b. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Right, thank you. There is no wish to speak on this, so we'll now move to the vote of the motion on order paper. All those in favour, please show. Yeah, carried. Thank you. Right, item number 10, report from the Employment Committee, pay policy statement, pages 271 to 286. Mr. Brecken to move and Mr. Bedford to second. Thank you, Mr. Brecken.
Thank you, Chairman. Section 38 of the Localism Act 2011 requires all local authorities in England and Wales to produce a pay policy statement for each financial year, which must be approved by full council. So the statement must set out the council's policies in relation to the remuneration of its chief officers, remuneration of its lowest paid employees, and the relationship between the remuneration of its chief officers and the remuneration of its employees who are not chief officers. Sections 9, 10 and 11 cover the current situation regarding this year's pay reward, which is still ongoing, but I'm quite happy to move the motion on the paper that the County Council's Pay Policy Statement 22-23, as set out in the appendix to the report of the Employment Committee, be approved. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Could I call upon Mr Bedford now to second? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think the report is pretty clear in itself, and I associate myself with the words of Councillor Brecken, second the motion.
Thank you. Could I now call Mr Hunt to speak, please?
Thank you, Chair. Labour Group would just like to make a statement on this because we recognise that this is not a done deal in all respects. At the moment, it's still ongoing. We recognise that the Council has to take a decision on this. But at the same time, we also recognise there are numerous high priorities in this Council which we've been discussing this afternoon. The one that stands out is the work that the officers have done for us in producing the document on delivery with some excellent outcomes regardless of what Mr Mear might say from time to time. We all understand that, but it is to the staff that this motion is speaking. And I would not like, and we would not like this to go through without some recognition that with inflation on the rise, with the freeze that the public sector has had over many years in the recent past, that an offer of 1.75 is nowhere near what the employees are asking for, which is some redress on those years and some redress on the work that they've endured over particularly the last 2 years. We feel that therefore we have to abstain on this and really make a statement of support of our staff and the increase that they deserve, whether or not it can be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you. Nobody else? Right. There's nobody else, so we'll now move... Pardon? Oh, yes. Sorry, yes. Mr Brecken, sorry.
Yeah, I think I'd just say, I mean, the current pay award is related to last year's pay policy statement that was approved by this council. So that's the 21-22 pay award. This is the 22-23. I think we take on board Max's points, but we are in the hands of national negotiations, so we are tied to those. So this will obviously be backdated to April, but it has been a challenge trying to build into the MTFS what we expect and what we think we'll end up with. But we're well aware of the union's claim for a 10% award and obviously potential of strikes, etc. But that is the best we're at the moment. But yeah, this certainly relates to what was approved by council last year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? No? Right, well, I will now take a vote on the motion on the order paper. All those in favour, please show now. Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's carried in the majority. Thank you. Right, that concludes our business for our full council meeting on the 1st of December 2021. I'd like to now declare the meeting closed and wish you all well and a safe journey home. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.